everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone doing? I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Naomi and I have our wedding in a couple months, and a lot of decisions to make every day. Some new decisions to make. On top of that, work, podcasting, writing, giving Prembly 9,000 medicines every day. That's a lot. It's a lot. But did make my own peanut butter bars today. Ran out. I get Trader Joe's peanut butter bars. It's my breakfast usually. I know, exciting, right? But I ran out, and ever since I got COVID, I've been really anxious. Let's go with anxious about going inside places, even wearing a mask, even with my portable air purifier. It just takes a lot of energy to kind of push past that. So I'm just like, what can I do to not have to go into Trader Joe's until it's absolutely necessary, until we're out of most of the stuff we need, not just peanut butter bars. So I made my own. Gotta say, better. I made better peanut butter bars than Trader Joe's sells. So there's your lesson. If you have some kind of very minor PTSD and agoraphobia after having COVID, and or even if you haven't had COVID and still the last 3 years, Jesus Christ, 2020, 2021, 2022, Jesus. The last 3 years has created that in your heart, then just know that, just like a half hour, 45 minutes of your day, you can make something that you would usually buy. And then you can... It's not healthy. It's not healthy to not get over this fear, but you know what? I am, dealing with it. It's good to know that I can make my own versions of store-bought food. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I hope you are in a more mentally healthy place. This is a very good episode today. This is Sheldon Epps. If you don't know who Sheldon is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Originally from Compton, California, theater and TV director Sheldon Epps' decades-long career in entertainment has spanned both the stage and television. He was a co-founder and the associate artistic director of the off-Broadway theater The Production Company. He conceived and directed the Duke Ellington musical Play On, which received 3 Tony Award nominations, and he was the artistic director at the Pasadena Playhouse for 2 decades. For television, Sheldon has directed episodes of Frasier, Everybody Loves Raymond, Friends, Hannah Montana, Sister Sister, and many, many more. And he was a producer/director for the hit UPN/CW show Girlfriends. Most recently, just this fall, Sheldon's memoir, My Own Directions, A Black Man's Journey in the American Theater, was published. Check it out! So this one came about because a publicist. Sheldon had written a book and he was out promoting it. And, on this show, I mostly talk to people who have kind of directly influenced my own brain in whatever way that really means. Whether they've written a film that kind of pushed me a certain direction or whatever. But Sheldon's career was so interesting, and he has directed a lot of TV that has affected me. So I was like, yeah, this sounds cool. I only mention this because, a lot of times when I'm not reaching out directly to a person, when there's a publicist or a manager or an agent or someone in between, I'm always kind of starting off the interview kind of at a distance, but I think we found some resonance with each other early on. And we got into some cool stuff about faith and about the mind you have to be a director, about existential reckoning, and a lot of other cool stuff. So I hope you enjoy this last episode of 2022. And if you do, why not check out other episodes of Beginnings? What I like to do here in the beginning is a little recommended if you like. Sheldon is a director/producer. What about other director/producers, or just producers, or just high-level writer, producer types that I've had on the show? I've talked to Leslie Headland, Gillian Robespierre, Ron D. Moore, Alex Ross Perry, Damon Lindelof. Why not check out those episodes? If you like what you hear, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. And coming up, I've got a lot of cool episodes. Jim Zub, wonderful comics writer. Alina Lowensohn, brilliant actor who you may know from a lot of Hal Hartley's movies. Terry Winter, just talked to Terry Winter. Sopranos writer, creator of Boardwalk Empire, co-creator of the new show Tulsa King. That was a brilliant talk, so look forward to those. Have a great New Year's Eve. Stay safe. Wear a mask if you're going to be inside. A good mask. Don't mean to get parental, but, you know, KN95, N95. Make sure it's fit to your face. All right, that's all I'll say about that. Have a good New Year. Have a safe New Year. And now, let's talk to Sheldon. Are you married at all?
I am married at all.
Here's a question. No, this is the thing that was that people were freaking out about on Twitter today and yesterday, and it made me start thinking about things that, as I tell you this, will roll into the topics that I talk about.
Okay.
But a black woman was talking about how she had just sold a show, and she was about to go on a date, and her date calls her, and she's very excited. She goes, "I sold a show," and then the guy cancels the date. And it seemed to be a very particular. It set off a very particular nerve in a lot of people on Twitter about how men see in heterosexual relationships, how men can't be with a more successful woman, and specifically a more successful black woman. My wife is black, just so this makes sense. She is more successful than me. Great. It's great.
And you have no problem with that.
I have no problem. And that's but the thing it made me start to think about was legacy. And I'm just like, what is the thing that I'm actually concerned with on this earth in this time I have? And sorry, there's a cat's butt in here.
I see that. Yeah.
The minute I start this, they can't wait to try to get in front of me.
Well, I can say that would not bother me either. I've not had that experience, but bring it on. I'm ready for it.
Have you thought about legacy though? Like, what do you want? Like, I want to make things that affect people, but I think about Einstein all the time. And that how influential Einstein was, obviously, as a scientist. And now, if you ask most people who Einstein was, they might be like, the crazy-haired guy on the poster in my college dorm or something like that.
He was some kind of genius or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, so does legacy? Like, obviously, making things that affect people matters. In the here and now. And hopefully that some of that stuff will live beyond you.
Right.
But I don't know. Have you ever been like obsessed or worried about legacy, or does it matter to you?
I don't think that I'm worried about it, obsessed about it. I really don't think about it that much, although I guess I must think about it a little bit because that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book, my book, just as a way of telling other young Black artists, in particular, artists of color, that they can achieve, they can take some, hopefully, inspiration and guidance from the fact that I was a young Black kid in Compton who was told, you can't do this, you can't do that, don't dream too big or too far. And I ignored that and managed to have a great, wonderful career, in spite of those restrictions that people tried to put on me. So I guess that's kind of legacy, is to pass that on through the book and through talking about the book and all of that.
Was that overtly told to you that you shouldn't dream big, or was it just implicit in a lot of the way people would direct you?
A little of both. I think it was sort of broadly in the air in American society at that time I grew up in the 50s, mid to late 50s, early 60s. And I think people of color weren't encouraged to have great big dreams or big aspirations. If you could go to college and get a nice job and then have a good career, that was sort of all you were supposed to want, and there were some people who would say you weren't supposed to want that much, I think about it. This didn't happen to me, but this did happen to my brother. My brother's 4 years older than me. And he was told when he was in high school, you're not college material. So that's a direct example of somebody being told, don't think too big. And my brother ended up getting graduate degrees from Rutgers and Yale. So obviously he didn't listen to that advice. And, nothing like that was ever implicitly said to me, but, don't get too big for your britches, or don't aspire too high, or, there's only so far you can go, was sort of spoken by implication, if not directly.
Are there people in your life at that time that are inspiring you or telling you can achieve certain things? And also, as a complete parenthetical, but I want to get into this at some point anyway, is how do you form the ambition to do this in the first place then? If you have all these signs saying like, don't.
Right. Well, all of the things, the restrictive things that I talked about came from outside of my community and came from, to be blunt, came from white America, and came from message that you would get through white controlled media. From within the Black community, from my family, from those people around me, from people at my father's church, there was encouragement to believe that my generation could do whatever we wanted to. I think my generation was the first generation where people started to say, hey, you can be president of the United States. Well, it wasn't somebody exactly my age who achieved that, but he's not all that much younger than me, so obviously that was still being said when Barack came along. But those were the kind of statements that were made when I was in elementary school, junior high school. You don't dream small, dream big. You can be whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do. You have to train, you have to get ready, you have to work for it. But there's no reason you can't have it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's interesting. I'm sorry, the picture, I always try to visualize this stuff, or I think in diagrams a lot of times. So basically in Compton, you're getting messages that say you can do whatever you want, and then it's outside, it is
right.
Just whites that are essentially
right.
white.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm going back to that story I just told you. I'm sure that guidance counselor was not a Black woman. In fact, I know it. That guidance counselor was a white woman who said that to my brother. When I came along later and started to talk about, colleges I wanted to go to, and I would, by then I was concentrating on studying drama in school. And I said, well, I think I'd like to go to Yale Drama School. Well, I don't know. That's like aiming really high. Maybe you want to reconsider that. Okay, maybe Carnegie Mellon. Well, they don't take too many people. You might, isn't there some smaller school that has a good drama program that you want to think about? So again, by implication, not so much direct, but it was clear from white society that you were only the level of your ambition was to be carefully examined and sometimes restricted.
I mean, was there a change at all? Because you're a teenager through one of the most tumultuous times in the last 60, 70 years, right? And so did the message about your ambitions or the possibilities that your life could take, or the trajectories that you could go on in your life, did that change at all through this time, or not? I guess is the only other possibility. It didn't.
Well, no, it definitely changed. I mean, one can think of the Black Power movement in the 60s as about violence and as about uh, bigger political goals, which it was. You know, if you're not being given what you deserve, take it. If you need to take it violently, take it violently. That was all true. But it was also about empowerment. You know, it was about believing Black is beautiful. Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud. You know, don't be shy. You know, proclaim it and proclaim that not just though I am a Black man, but because I am a Black man, I can do whatever I want to do. You know, I can reach great heights and have any opportunity that I'm up to. And if you tell me that I can't, we're going to have a problem. I'm going to exert my Black power to fight you on that. You know, I'm not just going to lie down and accept it because you say it's true.
So did that filter into your own personality as things are changing?
I think so. I was talking about Carnegie before, Carnegie Mellon University. You know, Carnegie actually wasn't in my aspirations as a school to go to. I just didn't know that much about it. But somebody said to me, talking about schools you're applying to and all of that, and somebody else who was interested in going to school for drama to study acting said, well, I'm applying to Carnegie. You could apply too. I dare you, you'll never get in. So, of course, the next day I applied to Carnegie and then did the research, you know, to find out why I should be applying. But I really applied on the dare because somebody said, I dare you. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I guess that was in my early mentality to not be stopped by somebody else declaring there's something you can't do.
And one of the reasons why you wanted to go there was, of course, for Primanti Brothers sandwich, where they put the French fries right on there. I went to
yes,
Pitt,
you are correct. Oh yeah. I was just on Forbes Avenue last week. I went back to the school to do some master classes, so I was in the neighborhood.
It was great. Isn't that a culture shock at all? I was about to say I did not like Pennsylvania. I don't think that's true. I think Pennsylvania was too small for my ambitions, and I kept butting up against the ceiling of what I wanted to do there.
What were you studying?
I won't go into the whole thing because I talk about it on the show almost too much. But I was a philosophy professor. So what I really wanted to do, what I'm doing now, writing and a little bit of performing and all that kind of stuff, never could admit it to myself. And so I lived the first half of my life, and parentheses, this is why I'm so interested when I talk to my guests about ambition and like how you form your own ambitions and how you have the courage or the confidence to follow them out, because I didn't, and I wasn't even self-aware enough to actually follow those ambitions out. So I just triangulated up between my parents' desires to have, I'm second generation, so their desires to have a lawyer/doctor, which is what every Jewish family, whoever first generation, they were first generation. They went to they're first people to go to college, and so they wanted me to not be what I am now in some way. But yes, so I was a philosophy professor first because I was like, well, it's kind of performing, but it's also kind of what they want.
Yeah.
Not really, though.
Right. But to go to your question about Pittsburgh, I have to say, honestly, I don't really think I had an experience of Pittsburgh at all, even though I was there for 4 years. Carnegie Mellon's drama department was wonderful, but so intense and so focused that you kind of never got away from the campus, that however many square blocks that is. And the Fine Arts Building was sort of my world for those 4 years. Occasionally I would go to Shady Side to have a meal, or Squirrel Hill to go to a deli and have a meal. But I don't really think I had an experience of Pittsburgh that could allow me to know whether I liked it or not.
It's a great city. I find it to be creatively very inspiring because it has a very vibrant music scene, and
Yeah.
not just a vibrant music scene, but a music scene that has, I don't know how to phrase this, the courage of its convictions. If you have an idea to do something, you have a bunch of people there that are willing to pitch in and help with that idea. It's very collective. There's a lot of like energy where people will help you realize certain ideas.
Yeah.
And I think I that really helped me kind of start to push away from what my parents' wants were.
Right. It's a great art city in general. I mean, great museums. Pittsburgh Ballet for a long time has been considered one of the best ballet companies in the country. And then Carnegie was there, great music school, great drama school. So it's a very good art city, absolutely.
Yeah. Did your parents have a specific desire for you?
Well, this is interesting. I sort of came to my professional life late in the game, meaning I wanted to be a trial lawyer or I thought I wanted to be a trial lawyer for most of my childhood, probably inspired by Perry Mason or the Defenders or something like that. And maybe I didn't even understand what it meant, though I did know a couple of trial lawyers and admired them. But when I made this move to New Jersey from California, that's where I got involved with the drama club and doing plays and all of that. So it wasn't until senior year when I said, I think this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be an actor. They never said no. They never said, we'd rather that you be that trial lawyer. They just said, you have to go to college. You have to get a degree. If that's what you want to do, you can do that, but you have to go and get a college degree. Mm-hmm. So other than insisting on that, on getting a degree from a real college as opposed to a drama school, a certificate from a drama school, they were not people who sort of pushed any of us into specific careers. No.
Interesting. So what did they do for a living?
My father was a Presbyterian minister who started the first Black Presbyterian church west of the Mississippi River. And his success at building that congregation got him invited to the administration of the church in New York City, which is why we moved. And my mother was a home economics teacher in the area of sewing. And she stopped working for many years while she was raising the three of us. But then she went back to work when I was in high school and taught for many years after that.
Can you give me a quick rundown of Presbyterianism? As a Jew, it's all everything. Like I know a couple points for a lot of for Pentecost. Pentecostal, I know that, and Catholicism. Grew up with a lot of Catholics, but what's Presbyterianism?
Presbyterian is a Protestant religion in the vein of Lutheran, less formal than Episcopalian, less raucous than Baptist.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is it as like white Protestantism is like psychotic in the way that it's like formed people in the United States? Like, how does Black Protestantism or Presbyterianism shake out? Did it get it? And also, did it get into you as just a sidebar?
No, it didn't get into me. And one of my bold announcements was in high school when I told my father that I was going to stop going to church every Sunday, which was sort of required of us. Mm-hmm. And I said I didn't want to do it anymore. And he accepted it, Okay. He said, okay. And Presbyterianism is, listen, somebody once said that every Black church in the country is really a Baptist church with different tags on it. And that's kind of true, deeply religious, good music, belief in God and Jesus, and belief in the scripture. The rest was largely a matter of administration and funding and all of those things. But when I go into a Black Lutheran church or a Black Presbyterian church, there's very little difference.
Okay. So your dad's also either, I was going to say pretty cool, but also probably more like respects your choices. Sorry, this is revolutionary. I'm projecting my own stuff. I'm like, oh, a parent respects your choices. Both my wife and I struggle with in adulthood, even.
Yeah, no, we were very lucky. I think they really did respect our choices. I mean, a kid announcing that he wants to be an actor, and there's not even an argument about it. Just the good advice that you still have to go to college and get a degree. And my brother was the perpetual student. He started out studying history or something in undergrad. Then he studied divinity at Yale, and then became a lawyer studying at Rutgers, went to Rutgers Law School. So, they were supportive of both what we wanted to do, and they were also supportive if we changed our minds and decided to do something else. Very lucky that way. I remember my father once when I was maybe 8, 9, 10, and I had a problem, and I said, oh God, Dad, I have this problem. What should I do? And he said, well, you should do what you think. Number one, endowing me with the ability to think. And number two, endowing me with the ability to make a decision on my own rather than depending on him to tell me what to do. It was a great lesson early on to have somebody say, well, do what you think.
What is it like having a non-contentious relationship with your parents? This is so alien to me.
It's great. No, it's good, and I realize that that's unusual, fortunate, and probably has solved a number of neurotic issues for me that other people have.
Yeah, for sure. So wait, how did I want to get back to this, but before I lose the question in my brain, how did your actual ambition morph? Because you said trial lawyer, but what was it that changed it, or what pushed you into another direction, or gave you, possibly it's your parents, gave you the space to actually realize it? I'm very curious.
My ambition to be in the theater,
yeah.
You mean? It was going to see Broadway shows. As I mentioned, I grew up for the first part of my life in Los Angeles until I was 9 or 10. And see a couple of plays. I've been to the theater in Los Angeles, but I'd never been to a big tour of a Broadway show and had never been to New York. So when we moved to Teaneck, New Jersey, and I was going through all kind of culture shock and, meeting people like you, meeting Jewish people for the first time and hearing, about bagels and Hanukkah and all those things, which was a foreign language to me, I was kind of mind blown. So one of the things that my mother did was just start taking me to Broadway shows. And I saw things like Sammy Davis Jr. and Golden Boy and Pearl Bailey and Hello Dolly, Leslie Uggams in Hallelujah Baby. So I saw all these great Black performers owning the stage, and at a time when things were still restricted for people of color. In my life, those that I knew about were Black Americans. There were people doing what they wanted to do with brilliance, with strength, with integrity, and being figuratively and literally applauded for it. And there was something in that initially just made me feel good about being a Black person, but said, oh, that's a route to having power. You can be on stage and command an audience, be in control, at least that time that when you're on stage. Now, who knows what happens when you leave the theater? You probably go to 8th Avenue and can't get a cab. But for that time, you are fully in control and in power.
Was that something that I identify with the desire to not power for the sake of power, but power to do the things I want to do in life.
And that's what they were doing. They were using their power to exercise their art. They weren't trying to change anybody else's life, except as it would be changed by delivering whatever story they were telling on the stage.
Was there something compelling about that idea of telling a story too? Or is
yes.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it for you?
If I go back to the beginnings, and people think I make this up, but I saw my first professional production actually at the theater where I would later work for 20 years. I saw a production at Pasadena Playhouse of a play called A Member of the Wedding, with a great Black iconic star, Ethel Waters. Now, her performance was one thing and embodied all those things we just talked about, but it was also a play about somebody my age. It was a play about a young girl trying to find herself and her sense of community. So that was the first time when I realized that you could go to the theater and actually see a story that had something to do with your life, that could be moving and touching and even informative about issues that you had in your own life. So it'd be a better story if I could tell you that that's the day I decided to be in the theater, but you already know that's not true. But it is the day that I sort of fell in love with the idea of going to the theater and watching people tell me stories. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that would be a terrible story because I would know you were lying. I'd be like, no, no one does that. The thing I've learned, I've done this show for almost 13 years. And the thing I've learned is that it's all a process of either uncovering something in you, discovering that it was there. There's something. It's always like there's something where like eventually there's a rupture in people's lives, and it lets them take control in a way they never did before of their own kind of existential pathway. Yeah. Unless they're rich, and then they just do what they want anyway. And then but those are the least.
Or they're rich and they have no idea what they want to do.
Right. And then there's doing whatever, and they can have success or not have success, but it doesn't matter to them because they can just do something else. Right. People have argued with me about that on the show before, where I'm just like, I do think being wealthy gives you a cushion where if X doesn't work out, you can try Y or whatever.
I think that's true. So I think you're right about that. I think economic necessity drives you to do well what you've chosen to do, because if you don't do it well, you're not going to be able to pay your bills. So, if you have the cushion of something, a trust fund or something else, a bank account that's full to pay your bills, I do think it can affect drive and ambition and commitment to, staying on a path. I think that's true.
Yeah. It's like creatively, I was doing my worst work when I was scrounging, unemployed, looking for any kind of job in New York. And just like, I moved there, and then 2 weeks later was the financial crash in 2008. So it was not a great couple years. And I'm like, I don't think I was making great stuff then or doing good work then.
Yeah. Yeah. I also have the experience of having started a theater with no money, with a bunch of other people who had no money. None of us was rich enough to start a theater and support it. But we were doing it for the love of what we were doing, and not caring about whether we made money on it. We all had other jobs, other sources of income. But in a way, we were still working toward that goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were still working to support that theater and to keep it alive. So though somebody else was signing the check, that's what we were working for.
Yeah. By the way, Compton to Pasadena, that's a long trip, isn't it?
Yes. And especially at that time, that was a very, very long trip, geographically, but also two different worlds. Just as Compton to Teaneck, New Jersey was a very long trip.
Yeah.
And entering a completely different world, as I said.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's weird. I know Teaneck pretty well because my wife's family moved there from, she was born in Harlem, and then her mom got married again and moved to Teaneck. So right across the GW.
There we go.
It's very nice.
You're right.
Okay.
It is nice.
Wait, when you decided you didn't want to go to church anymore, did you already know, okay, this is the thing that I sometimes am very curious about. Did you know you didn't have faith, or did you have faith at some point and it kind of evaporated at some point?
That was not the reason that I stopped going to church. I still had faith. I still have faith.
Interesting.
What I was rejecting, if that's the right word, or walking away from, was organized religion. And because I was living with someone who was involved in the upper echelon of the administration of the church, I learned perhaps more than one should know about the connection between money and church going. Not religion or faith, but money and church going, and the stuff that goes on in the fiscal side of churches and organized religion.
Mm-hmm.
If my father had been doing church service outside in a park somewhere, I might have continued to go, because I thought my father was a great preacher, and I loved to hear him preach. But there was something about going to a church, to this building with all the stuff and the rituals and all of that was not for me anymore.
Was there something specific that you learned that you're comfortable talking about? Was it just the vulgarity of mixing this thing that's supposed to be high-minded with this kind of just like very commonplace,
it was that
type stuff?
Yeah,
like
I don't remember anything specific, but I remember that. And this was not so much from my father, by the way, as from those around him. Hearing conversation. Listen, I feel the same way now when people talk about the theater. You know, I sometimes am in rooms where people are supposed to be talking about the theater and the art and creativity and all of that. And all they're talking about is money. You know, how are we going to make this work so we can make a lot of money? How are we going to make this work so, we can meet the budget, blah, 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 blah. That's equally offensive to me. And I often head out of those rooms as I headed out of that room. I was hearing too much conversation, not about spirituality and religion and faith, as you mentioned, but about dollars involved, the fiscal side of it.
Okay, well then I have to ask, how do you, because this is something I have also had difficulty with, is how do I be okay with the vulgar money side of Hollywood and also make things I want to make? I mean, for how long? Decades, directed sitcoms, right? Was that just like, did you get into a mentality where you're like, this is a job, I'm just doing this job, it will support other things I want to do? Could you do artistically things you wanted to do in these things?
Some of all of what you just said. For one thing, directing on television did give me the freedom to continue to work in the theater, and actually gave me funding that I could share with my theater. I would never have been able to pass along some of what I gave to my theater and others if I hadn't been working in television. So it was good for that. But there is creativity in television often. It's not a intellect art free zone. You can actually use your brain, and you can actually use your art to create a good television show. Not all of them, but I'm very proud of Frasier and Friends and Girlfriends. Those were good.
Produced by Frasier.
Yeah, those were good, solid storytelling experiences, and often touching storytelling experiences, as well as very, very funny. So I never had a fundamental crisis of conscience because I was also directing television. It's a valid art form to me. Not always. There were some things that I didn't enjoy. And at a certain point, there were some things that I started saying no to, because I knew that it wasn't going to be satisfying for me beyond the paycheck.
Yeah. I think I found that, the more that my wife and I, the further we get into our careers, that we've learned just not to work with assholes. I think that has been the kind of
That's a good rule.
Because it was like it would. I don't want to go into the whole thing, but the first show we sold was ruined by people who thought that we were just two dumb kids who somehow fell off a turnip truck into into an executive's office.
Yes.
And they knew better than, and I'm sure they knew better than us in terms of certain things, but that really affected us emotionally. By the end of the thing, we left this project, and I was having chest pains because it was so difficult to work with these people.
Right. And listen, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to work with assholes more than once. That's sort of the definition of insanity. There are times when you don't know. A lot of things are put together without any actual knowledge of people, even if their credits and their IMDb page and all that. That doesn't tell you who somebody is and how they operate. So you don't find out until you're in the thick of it. But if you find out you're in the territory of assholes in the thick of it, don't do it again.
Yeah. Was there a point where you realized that you had some power of your own and you could start saying no to certain things where early on, maybe you're just like, well, I need this paycheck, or I need X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, early on, I don't remember ever saying no to any job that came along. Because you're trying to establish yourself, you're trying to establish your reputation in the business, you're trying to establish your brand in a way, or at least your reliability as an actor, as a director, as a writer. But there did come a point where, and this may have been before I was financially in a situation to do this, but there did come a point when I started to say, well, I can say no to things now. I don't have to take every job that comes along. And a lot of it is, you have to get over the fear that if you say no, no other job will ever come along, which I think we all kind of carry around with us a little bit, at least for a while. But you have to get to a point where you're genuinely able to say, I'm going to pass on this, as people pass on me and you all the time. And that doesn't mean that my career is going to be over. It just means I'm not going to do this job. Some other job will come along.
Mm-hmm. So this is also confusing to me as a fear-based person. Literally, the door behind me, there's stairs down to the front porch. Every time I walk down them, I'm kind of imagine myself crumpled at the bottom, and I like grip the banister tighter. So even like a basic act such as walking down the stairs is filled with fear for me. In some, look, I'm saying it's just a small part. I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit.
You still walk down the stairs. Yes,
I still walk down the stairs.
Yeah.
It's just that it's tinged with fear. So I'm very curious. How were you formed as a person where fear isn't built into your molecules?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess part of it is early success. I did spend a lot of time early in my career not working. And, though I was never flooded with financial security, I was okay. I was getting by. I never had to have what they call a day job, meaning washing dishes or waiting tables or any of that. And again, going back to my childhood, the support of my parents and the community, I believed that great things could happen if you worked hard. And I did work hard, and I trained well, and then I worked hard. So it just never occurred to me that failure was an option. I'm not saying it wasn't an option, and I saw people around me failing. But there was just something that made me believe, or allowed me to believe, that I could move forward in what I was doing. I could make choices, and that I would not fail, or if I had a failure, it would be temporary. There would be no failure that was going to define the rest of my life. If I don't do this job, or if I do this job and it doesn't go well, that means I'm never going to work again. I just never, ever felt that,
Interesting. This is so fascinating to talk to someone that both confident, not like, oh yeah, no, well, yeah. Hey, there's, if this didn't work out, something else would work out. Because I was raised with this belief that any failure would go on my permanent record, and then my life would be ruined. And so I was just like straight and narrow, and just I was a very good student, all this other stuff. So I'm just like, oh, interesting. This is what a good, and I had a good childhood, but this is what a great childhood is like. Interesting.
Yeah. I will say, it is something as a Black American you're conscious of. I believe in the theater field, this has been true. White directors are allowed to fail upward. Meaning they can do something, they can do a show on Broadway, for example, and it doesn't work, but it showed some talent, so they get another chance. That's not really true for directors of color, It's got to be good that first time, otherwise the door's going to get shut behind you,
Yes.
And maybe shut behind other directors of color. So it's got to be good, not just for you, but for everybody else.
For the culture. I would even say that white directors don't even have to be good to fail upwards. That there doesn't have to be a spark of something good in there. It could just be awful, and they'll still get that next job. But that's just.
I don't want to go that far, because that might just depress me. So I won't say that.
Was your dad told to go out west to start a church, or was he like that? Was like the hierarchy directive, or I don't have the term.
He had no, that's correct. He was from Norfolk, Virginia, went to school in Virginia, and Pittsburgh, actually went to seminary in Pittsburgh, and then started a small Black church in North Carolina. which for whatever reason made some noise and got him a reputation. And I think he also did some writing for Presbyterian journals or whatever. So he was out there, his name was out there in a national sense. And the Presbyterian Church, the administration of the Presbyterian Church, wanted a greater representation on the West Coast in particular, and in Los Angeles in particular. So he was, I think it was requested, I don't think it was commanded of him that he go west, young man, but he was asked to go and start a church here in Los Angeles. And my mother actually didn't want to go, and they did separate for a while because she had no interest in living in California and that far away from her family. Fortunately, my sister had been born already, and for her, they decided to stay together. So my mother soon followed. Otherwise, there would have been no me.
What led your dad to do that? Like, what did he have an ambition? Was there something that pushed him to come out here?
I think, my father took his religion very seriously. The church had paid for his education. So I think that might have been part of it, that if the church, if the church, which had been generous to him, wanted him to do something, he felt some obligation to, return the great things that they had done for him. And I think he believed that the church was asking him to do something that God also wanted. And I'm sure my father prayed deeply and with great intent. And I'm sure he had a few conversations with God, and he believed that that is what God wanted him to do.
Mm. Did you ever talk with him? Like, did you know when he felt a calling, or like how it revealed itself to him?
No, I wish I had talked to him about that, but it seemed to be quite clear to him early on. I'm not making this up. My father's name, first name from birth, is Saint. His name is Saint Paul Epps.
Interesting.
So there may be something about that indicates he never really had a choice from the time of his birth, and his boyhood friends call him Saint. So he was called Saint from a young age.
Almost, it was the phrase nominative determinism. Is that it?
Yeah, that would do it, right?
That's...
if your name was Nurse Betty from birth, that might be an indication of where you're supposed to go.
So the reason I'm asking this is because I'm wondering, like, there are not just like conscious signals you get when you're younger, but there's unconscious things that kind of get into your psyche that push you in a certain direction. And the idea of having someone who has had a calling in the household, it just, again, after doing this for 13 years, it like pings something on my antenna that makes me think that there is like, oh, I wonder how that gets into you as a person living with your
yeah. Father. Well, I think it was definitely there. I'm not sure it was there for my entire career, but in terms of going to Pasadena Playhouse, which was not a very strong theater at the time that I went, and it was open, but it wasn't highly respected. Going to Pasadena Playhouse and staying much longer than I anticipated. I often thought about that and referred to that as pursuing a mission in the same way that my father had, and not just doing the plays, but building the theater, building a community around the theater, serving young audiences, educational programs. All of that was stuff my father did at his church. There was church services on Sunday, but there was a whole lot more.
How old were you when you moved from Compton to Teaneck?
Let's see. I was 10 years old.
Okay, so you were, already kind of a human. You already had a personality. You already had lots of desires.
A little bit.
How did that rupture, or did that rupture do anything in your life? Did it push you in a certain direction? And what, not just like going to Broadway, but like, was there something that like it maybe opened up for you that maybe you wouldn't have considered the things you considered in life otherwise?
Well, it allowed me to be introduced to the theater, to Broadway theater and theater going, as I said. And I do think that move and sort of not having a real community, not having real activities, because, I was not a football guy or a track guy or any of that pushed me toward the drama club, not because I was so interested in being an actor, but I was interested in language and, music and all those things. And it was kind of a community of where I felt comfortable, and doing plays was mainly at that time just fun and a good activity for me.
Yeah. So did you have any other community outside of the drama club in Teaneck? Because I'm curious if, like, you said you had a pretty expansive community in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if, like, maybe you missed that. This is so, look.
I did miss it.
It's so reductive, but that is in there, right?
Yeah, no, I did miss that strong sense of community that I'd had in Los Angeles. So those theater groups became my community, and that bunch of us who was fascinated by doing plays and being in plays became my community. And they weren't all people who wanted to be actors any more than for a long time I wanted to be an actor. But they were people who just loved the fun of making a show.
Yeah. I mean, what were the practical steps you were taking? Because so you go to school and then you are like, what happens after CMU?
Well, I was very fortunate. I actually got a job in my senior year at the Alley Theater in Houston. So I actually started working pre-graduation. And I had a job after that in summer stock at a very big summer stock company, Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera. So what happened was I started working, and then I moved to New York and, did all the things that a young actor has to do. I auditioned and got other work in theater, either in New York or in regional theater. I did small parts on soap operas. I did a couple of commercials. Later on, then, when I started my theater company, I did teach for a while at American Academy. But, all the stuff actors have to do to hang in there and make a living.
Yeah. I just asked because I think that's the stuff that gets elided in a lot of these stories, right? People go like, one of the reasons I started the show was because I read Steve Martin's book. And he goes from doing magic at Disneyland to stadiums within like a chapter. And I'm like, wait, you did nothing in between? I'm not looking for a struggle necessarily, but like building blocks. And I think it's always instructive to hear the kind of building blocks of how someone becomes who they are.
Right. Well, certainly going to Carnegie and going to a very difficult, intense program was one of them. All of the things I did after. But really for me, the biggest building block was starting that theater company, which initially I was involved in as an actor, but that is where I started directing. was encouraged to start directing by one of the other people that I started the company with. And quickly sort of transitioned from acting to directing, because I started working as a director and really making a living and not having to teach anymore and not having to audition for jobs, but being offered jobs or being able to go to places that were producing theaters and producing plays and say, this is something I want to do, and them agreeing. So the transition was made easy because it became easy for me to work as a director. But that was certainly starting that company and having a place to learn the craft of directing and starting to direct was a big building block for me.
Did you like it more than acting, or was it that? Yeah.
Yeah. What I figured out, or what occurred to me when I one day asked myself that question, why do I like this more than acting, was I was interested in the process of figuring it out and putting it together. Actually repeating it every night and standing in front of an audience and all of that was not all that wonderful for me. And frankly, I'd get kind of bored quickly.
Yeah, I get that. I asked that because my wife and I had sold a show 2019, that was about our relationship. And her being a stand-up and an actor, it was obvious that she would be in it. And me I'm a performer, but I'm more of a writer. And I had to have this really dark night of the soul where she was like, do you really want to? And would you be good at it? Because this would be a big ask to have to say hey, I want to be the other person in it. And I really had to reckon with myself where I'm
right.
I'm a good performer, but I'll never be a great performer personally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I sort of felt that too. I was a good actor, but I wasn't a great actor.
Yeah.
And I was an actor who could give the impression through technique of a lot of stuff going on that wasn't actually going on. I sometimes say that I became the kind of actor who was not the kind of actor that I like to watch or like to direct. So, that was an indication that I should let somebody else do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And was it tough for you at all? Or was it very much oh, you know what? Matter of fact, I know this about myself. Because you seem like a very self-aware person. It seems like you've always been a very self-aware person.
Yeah. No, it was, I just, for all the reasons I stated before, I just knew that, okay, I'm a director now, and this is what I'm supposed to be. And most informative, I didn't miss it. I didn't miss being on stage. I didn't miss being an actor. Or, a problem with many directors is they sit there watching the actors, longing to be the ones doing it. I was not having those feelings at all.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. A lot of you seems to resonate with me because it seems like you had a very, I don't know, I'll say this word, you tell me if it works or not, but a logical approach. You started out early in your life saying I want to be a lawyer. To be a lawyer means you have to kind of look at things analytically. So do you think you had an analytical mind when you were younger?
Yes. and still do, you know. My wife often refers to me as a debater, and that's true. I don't think I'm an arguer necessarily, but I am a debater, which is a sign of analyzing something, looking at the pros and cons and, starting out with a premise and either proving the premise or defying the premise. So yeah, that's definitely a part of me, and I think, there is something called script analysis, which is taking that script, that stack of papers, and analyzing it and figuring out how do I bring this to life, and what is the writer really trying to say? There's the words, but beyond the words, what's in the subtext of the text.
Yeah. That reminds me of running lines with Naomi where like she has all the things written in the side of stuff, just like
Yes.
what is the subtext
What's
of this line supposed to
right?
be? And I'm like, I don't know. You just say the line, right? Isn't that what's supposed to happen?
Well, all that stuff on the side might have some effect on how you say the line.
Well, look, there's a reason why I am behind the scenes. Almost naturally was filtered out some way. I was sorry. I was miming for the listener. I was miming like in my mind, what I was miming was a 49er panhandling gold through a little thing. So
right. Well, I can see you, and I didn't get any of that. So I'm glad you.
Hold on. You didn't get.
I'm glad you described it. Do it again.
You didn't get this from like me moving my arms back and forth as if I'm holding something.
It looks like you're trying to put a. This looks like you're trying to put a cookie sheet in the oven, and you've been drinking. So.
Oh, okay. I get the shaking. Okay. That's sifting. I'm sifting gold.
I got it now.
Sheldon, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. It's been fun to talk to you, and not just fun, but also interesting. So thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you again for joining me.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye, oh, 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 bye.